Obstruction of justice seems incredibly clear if you actually read the Mueller report. I mean, we know so much about what Trump did publicly, obviously, but we also have some new information about what he was pushing for behind the scenes and why he was doing it. So let's talk about a couple different examples of this. Substantial evidence indicates that the catalyst for the president's decision to fire Comey, which was of course the impetus for the entire investigation in the first place, was Comey's unwillingness to publicly state that the president was not personally under investigation, despite the president's repeated requests that Comey make such an announcement. Now, that is not what Trump gave as his explanation. He said he fired Comey because of something to do with the investigation into Hillary Clinton. We know now that's a lie. So he fires the head of the FBI. He lies about why he does it. That apparently isn't obstruction of justice. We also find out that he told Don McGahn to fire Robert Mueller. And then when Don McGahn wouldn't do it, he told Don McGahn to lie about Trump wanting to fire Robert Mueller. That too, apparently by itself, does not necessarily rise to the level of obstruction of justice. And I'm asking a serious question here. If you can push to fire the person investigating you, and that is not obstructing justice, can you come up with something that is? Really? Like, what would he have to do? Would he have to like personally exile Robert Mueller and like while wearing a hat that says, "I love obstructing justice"? Like, how clear does it have to be? But apparently this is not enough. And it leads to the conclusion on obstruction of justice from the Mueller report. Because we determined not to make a traditional prosecutorial judgment, we did not draw ultimate conclusions about the president's conduct. The evidence we obtained about the president's actions and intent presents difficult issues that would need to be resolved if we were making a traditional prosecutorial judgment. They chose not to do that. At the same time, if we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the president clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. Based on the facts and the applicable legal standards, we are unable to reach that judgment. Accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. So that is what we knew, that last bit from the Barr summary of the report from a couple of weeks ago. So they're saying clearly here that we don't want to work through the complex all of the stuff that would need to be done to prove that he obstructed justice, but we are clearly not saying that he did not obstruct justice based on at least 10 different incidents that we break down in the report, let alone all of the public attempts to tamper with witnesses and all of that. Also, very interesting, maybe a sort of explanation why they don't feel it rises to the level of obstruction of justice. They say, the president's efforts to influence the investigation were mostly unsuccessful, but that is largely because the persons who surrounded the president declined to carry out orders or accede to his requests. And so, in this case, as with the Trump Tower meeting, attempting to do something is no longer any sort of crime. If you order your subordinates to break the law and they choose not to, you apparently haven't done anything wrong. If you try to coordinate with the Russian government to hurt Hillary Clinton's chances of winning the presidency, but it doesn't actually happen in that meeting, that doesn't actually count as a crime, which I think is news to a lot of people. But very interesting going forward what needs to be done here. I'm not stating that the Mueller report is being clear that they are referring to Congress the need to resume this investigation or possibly impeach the president. But it's not difficult to read into this that might be what he's doing. And here is an example of that. So he talks about what the standard for proving obstruction is. And he says about underlying crimes, which is something, by the way, that William Barr talked about a lot 2 weeks ago, saying that because they're not saying that there was a conspiracy with Russia, you can't have any other crimes related to it if there's no underlying crime. That is very clearly contradicted by the Mueller report in this section. Proof of such a crime, the underlying one, is not an element of an obstruction offense. Obstruction of a criminal investigation is punishable even if the prosecution is ultimately unsuccessful or even if the investigation ultimately reveals no underlying crime. The injury to the integrity of the justice system is the same regardless of whether a person committed an underlying wrong. And I just want to drive home all of the people who took up the Barr summary and said, how dare you say that this could ever in any way be contradicted by the Mueller report? That is a direct inverse of what Barr said a couple of weeks ago. He said, I am not going to have any sort of referral for obstruction of justice because there's no underlying crime. That is directly against the legal theory and recommendation of Mueller right here. And Barr sort of alluded to that in his press conference today, saying that he disagrees with Mueller on his legal theories. And isn't it a strange coincidence that the way he disagrees is consistent with the 19-page letter that he put out as his audition for this role last year? William Barr was brought in because he does not believe believe that obstruction of justice is a real thing or that it can be prosecuted. And even though Mueller clearly says that you can be prosecuted even if there's no underlying crime, William Barr doesn't think it rises to the level, which is really interesting. And there's another section that talks about the separation of powers. And it says in that section that Congress, if it feels is necessary, it will not be sort of contradicting the constitutional powers of the presidency for them to investigate or have charges over obstruction of justice. And I have a feeling that you're probably going to see that talked about quite a bit as some Democrats in the House push forward based on that underlying argument.
Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.